Soloing is a very intriguing way of playing World of Warcraft, and it has become one of the go-to things that drives people playing the game even though it's an MMO and stuff is usually meant to do in groups. But it's always fascinating to see players do the unimaginable pulls or kills and get inspired and then try the same or new stuff by yourself. Soloing content like dungeons may also simply be a more convenient way of doing things, or maybe a bit more like your flavor, no matter what it is. Farming gold, leveling, farming gear, and by the way, this way you can secure that loot without any hunter to roll on your pre-raid biz. I myself feel that group play makes stuff too easy and I wanna play a different style. And I'm not alone. Soloing is a style where you can push your class and your gaming skills to the limit and do personal achievements. This video is going to be my comprehensive guide to soloing content in Season of Discovery. It's heavily focused on soloing dungeons and even raids in different level brackets. While doing this, it's currently phase 2, but the same principles will apply to all future phases. I'm dividing this topic into 2 separate videos. In the first video, I'm gonna focus down on general things that apply to all regardless of your class. This includes UI setup, general movement and kiting, consumables, and lastly useful trinkets or gadgets. In the second video, I'm gonna focus down more on warlock specific info about gear choices, runes and talents, also in the future phases, spells, which to use and where, including an in-depth theory crafting and calculations on most important abilities as a warlock. So let's dive into magic of soloing. First, in the general section, there is UI setup. When you're soloing, you really need to raise your awareness of incoming and outgoing damage and the relation of the two. When you're soloing, you have no healer, so the incoming damage is a thing you need to keep track on all the time, especially doing new stuff. Also, outgoing damage and self-healing is very important, and the balance of all these things is what keeps you alive and makes you kill targets before they kill you. When you keep track on the numbers and memorize the usual amounts, it deepens your understanding about how different abilities are affected by buffs or debuffs and makes you understand and deepen your knowledge on the mobs that you are fighting with. For example, some caster mobs hit very hard in melee, so it might be better not to interrupt them since then the overall damage can be lower. This is a thing that you can easily see from the incoming damage portion. I like to watch certain things like drain life healing ticks, which are affected by spell damage procs, and compare it to the incoming damage like mob melee or disease/poison hit amount and speed. When you're more used to soloing, the incoming damage will tell you if the mobs needs to be kited or slowed or stunned, or in my case, if you need to put on Curse of Weakness or something like that against them. Blizzard's own default UI scrolling battle text will do okay in the beginning, but if you wanna have more customizable and clear text fonts, mixed scrolling battle text is a great add-on for this purpose. The next thing in UI is that when you're soloing, you want to maximize your spell efficiency so that your dots and debuffs get the most out of their duration, and this is easiest done with dot timers. Almost all classes have some dots or abilities that you want to track on your enemies. I personally use custom weak auras to watch this and also track down some of the most important buffs and abilities I have. I also recommend you have some low health weak aura. I'm using one from hardcore days and it works fine. Also, I have a weak aura if my drain life gets resisted, and I recommend if you have some important ability that you don't wanna get resisted or missed, like drain life, frost nova or hunter traps, that you have a similar notification of it, because sometimes situations are so hectic that you need that extra info about these to notice them really. Also, add-on like Plater will show you some of your debuffs clean on top of your enemy health bars, so technically you can track down multiple debuffs at a time, and Plater also shows your threat amount, so that can be important if you play a pet class. One quite important thing in the UI section in my opinion is your health and resource bar size and positioning. You don't really want to focus your eyes to the top left corner of your screen every second, since the most important stuff is happening in the middle of your screen. I'm using WoW thick frames to make my health bar simply bigger and to see it more clearly. This same fundamentals applies also to your current target frames, which should be positioned near your character bars to see them at the same glance. If you want to think about targeting, sometimes you need to pull huge packs that has like 10 mobs or something, and it might be hard to click through all targets, so I use tab to simply pick up the next one. Sometimes this picks the wrong one, but it's still easier in my opinion than trying to click through every one of them one by one. This note is quite important, for example if you need to put certain spell or debuff to all the mobs like Siphon Life and focus other spells on a couple that you wanna kill first. Okay, let's go to the next part. Now we're going to talk about movement. With the right movement, you are going to take a lot less damage, run away from mobs without being dazed, and make your life very much easier. So first, if you somehow need to run or you're running and mobs are hitting you, try to run and jump at the same time to face mobs or strafe, because then the mobs cannot daze you, since dazing only happens if you are hit from behind. Also remember that you cannot dodge or parry or block hits from behind, so it reduces some damage also to show your face to the mobs. Strafing is quite tricky sometimes and you might take hits from behind and they possibly can daze you since the mobs are so close of being in front of you or behind you, like right on the edge while you're strafing. Next, let's talk about spell damage caster mobs. It is very important to LOS them if you can, because sometimes you can pretty much reduce their damage to 0 if just moving in and out of a room or behind some other small LOS object. Remember that you can also use LOS possibly against healing mobs that would else heal another melee trash mob by you just running with the melee trash mob out of line of sight of the mob that would else heal. This sometimes also helps with the DPS because things will go down faster. Next I'm gonna talk about kiting and reset spots that are very common in all dungeons and are quite crucial if you wanna solo harder content. Some of them are very obvious and well known, but some, especially the reset spots, are quite hard to spot. Kiting spots will help you to do damage or heal while the mobs you are fighting are running a long way around to get you, since mobs cannot jump up on objects. They actually need pathing that can be strictly only be walked or run. While kiting, beware though. Some mobs have an ability called trash and it can load up pretty heavily. Trash makes the mobs hit a couple of times instantly in a row and they can have the ability activated quite a long time, so it can really surprise you when they reach melee in some point. Also know that if you are facing a mob and strafing left or right constantly, your hitbox will be a bit larger and mobs and also you can hit just a tiny bit further. Reset spots on the other hand are spots that mobs cannot reach at all, and that will make them go evade and heal full and eventually run back to their original position. So, reset spots can be used if shit hits the fan, or you wanna skip some trash or something like that. I'm not especially great with the reset spots and tend to forget that would be an option, and I think if you wanna use them you kinda need to plan ahead of using them. For the last thing about movement, I'm gonna use warlocks as an example, but other classes probably have some other abilities or spells that you can relate this with. The thing is that when you're kiting or running away from mobs, you don't wanna run too far from them either. This is simply because as for warlocks you wanna keep your drain life attached to them, and it has about 30 yards range. I mean, it's a real catastrophe if you go too far and your drain life breaks instantly because you won't benefit really in anything of casting it then. Also, you want to use your time effectively. All this time running, you can also DPS to mobs. This tip probably applies on channeling casters mainly and hunters to be on the right range all the time. Next, let's talk about consumables. With consumables you can boost your basic stats or focus on upgrading health regen, mitigate damage, and so on. Your most no-brainer consumables are of course healing and mana potions. I like to use cheaper versions of these in trash pools and save the better versions for bosses or harder packs. Scrolls are very cheap and powerful addition, so go grab like Scroll of Protection, or if you wanna boost some damage, Scroll of your main stat. I don't think Scroll of Stamina is that good since it won't make you stay alive probably. Now if healing and mana potions were important, also various situational potions are very impactful. For example, Fire, Shadow, Nature or Frost Protection potions mitigate a huge chunk of incoming damage, and keep in mind that their effect stays an hour, so you can pre-pot these early and still have other potions ready once you start the fight. Magic resistance potions are good if there's a caster that hits hard or has some annoying frost slow, for example BFD Lady Service or Razorfen Down's Amnuna the Coldbringer. Also you can utilize the short duration of Lesser Stone Shield potion, and that can be good if there's lots of physical damage incoming. Resistance and armor potions last only a couple of minutes, but you can drink one of them and start the fight instantly, or wait a bit to get that 2-minute potion cooldown to go a bit off before starting the fight. One important potion that I haven't used myself but I just discovered it is the Restorative Potion. This can be good if you cannot remove disease or other impactful debuff from yourself. There has been a couple of times that I had to spam my buff foods just to stay alive to get that little regen on, and in that situation a single Restorative Potion would have cleared the damaging debuff. One no-brainer consumable is the Troll's Blood potions. They are kinda like elixirs and are useful for everyone, so go grab them always with you because they will make you sustain a lot better and regen really fast. Now that we got to elixirs, they should be used mainly to boost your damage, like Arcane Elixir for casters or Elixir of Agility for example hunters or maybe shaman. When we're talking about increasing damage, remember to use Wizard Oil or Sharpening Stones. They persist through death, so they are pretty efficient and cheap also, so no point of not using them. Lasting buffs are the food buffs, but they're kinda meh because the short duration they have. But I guess they're better than nothing and you still wanna have something to eat. Now in SOD you can utilize world buffs at different level brackets, and I definitely recommend doing so whatever you are doing. Black Fathom Boon is very good because of the extra hit you can get, so you can face higher level mobs without missing hits or getting resists that often, and the 20% movement speed really makes you faster than almost any other trash mob, so you can outrun them whatever the need is. Gnomragan world buff only increases damage, but you still wanna grab this always. Darkmoor Fair buffs are also good, and the up selection, meaning the 10% damage, is probably best in soloing too. Whatever world buffs there will be in future phases, they surely should be picked up. Next, let's talk about good and useful items or trinkets. You can have some sort of CC with every class with magic dust, or if you're a horde, glue from the early level quest from Durotar, but unfortunately it has only 10 usages per character, so save them later or use them when you really need them. I'm really not that keen on using these and want to dot up everything preferably, but it's good to remember these if you struggle with some packs. If you pulled more than you wanted, target dummies are very useful to drop down to get rid of some of the mobs hitting you, but of course you need to be an engineer to utilize them. If you're not an engineer, you pretty much have to survive through other means, but there are some helping trinkets like Nifty Stopwatch, which is acquired from Badlands, and it's very useful if you know there will be a fight, you need to get some distance to mobs or kill one fast and then run outside of the instance or something like that. You cannot swap trinkets in combat, so you kinda need to prepare that. Other speed increases like School of Impending Doom might sound tempting, but that can make you take so much damage to yourself and lose mana, so it's kinda not that useful in soloing, where your resources are almost as important as your HP. Of course, Witness potions are fine and they're very cheap actually. One interesting item for soloing is a Dark Whistle, which is a drop from Scarlet Monastery Library Houndmaster Loxing. It summons an uncontrollable level 30 pet hound for you, which actually can be used to separate a mob or a couple out of bigger group and pull them further, so you can DPS down one more easier and don't have to face the whole pack altogether from the get-go. You can also use all summons like Mechanical Dragonling as an engineer as well to soak random boss mechanics or debuffs that bosses do to a random target. These random summons also increase your DPS a bit, so yeah, they're useful. Lastly, in item section, I really want to point out that there are some self-healing items in the game also in the higher levels, and who knows what we might discover in the future, so keep your eyes open. Also, you really want to get your class specific items that might have a cooldown that has healing or mana back effects like Warlock and Mage offense at level 30. You can switch offense during combat, so you can utilize these and then switch to another one, just don't swap them instantly if they have a timer like 300 HP during 15 seconds, since once you activate them and then swap the item off, the effect also stops instantly, so you need to wear the item during the effect. In my opinion, other gear selection depends greatly on your class, so I'm not gonna go into it in this general section. And speaking of class specific stuff, I think this video is now kinda complete and we covered most of the important parts. I hope you got some tips to improve your performance if you have done soloing instances, or if you haven't even tried them, maybe you got some courage to try it out. I really enjoy this playstyle myself, and it's really appealing when you consider leveling alts now. The part 2 video is going to be about Warlock specific stuff, so go check that out if you are interested. Also go check out my dungeon soloing videos. I'm gonna go try to solo every single 5-man dungeon in SOD, and I'm gonna post a guide or run through videos about them. Thanks for watching, and see you again next time. Peace!